Welcome everyone to another episode of Dynamics Corner. From client to partner and now an MVP. I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode is recorded on January 31st, 2025. Kris, what a journey that sounds like. To go from a user of Business Central or NAV over to the partner, what it is like to go through that journey, some of the perspectives and challenges and views of that journey, as well as some low-code, no-code conversation. And we even touched upon the Reskill Program to help bring additional talented individuals within the Business Central community. With us today, we had the opportunity to speak with Microsoft MVP, Andy Wingate. Good afternoon.
Howdy.
Good
Hello.
afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
Hello. How are you guys doing?
Excellent.
Not too bad.
How are things?
My audio
I'd love to
got
say,
it.
a jolly good day over the pond.
You could like butchered that.
I butchered it?
I don't know.
It's all gone a bit slow. Is that? Oh, now it's snapped in.
There you go.
Well, yeah. We're okay.
Oh, it says uploading
like
stuff.
your-
What are we uploading? 80%.
Oh, the uploading is
like background
using your
process.
local recording, your local audio and video recording. It
Okay.
uses that to upload for the post-production edit. It gives us that crisp quality video and audio sound, so you can look your best.
Nice.
Not that you
I mean,
don't
I need
ever
all
look
the
your
help
best.
I can get.
No, sir. Not that you don't ever look your best, and you look great now, but that gives Kris the opportunity when he does the wonderful post-production job that he can really have that high-def, high-quality audio sound of you, so we can get the true,
Okay.
Andy Wingate persona on there.
Oh Jesus, that's what I've been trying to hide all these years, right?
Well, no, we let the cat out of the bag with this one now. So now the spotlight's on you, sir. So that's
you.
good. How are you doing? How is the week going? How are things over in London?
Yeah, good. I think it's a bit, grey and rainy. 3:00 on a Friday afternoon. It's the end of the month, right? January the 31st. So, which brings me to the end of dry January that I've been suffering through. So, and my wife said to me, it was also like convinced me to do this stupid dry January thing. So, and you're looking so much healthier. She's really trying to like convince me not to go boozing anymore. The reason I look so healthy is because I'm looking forward to that beer on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it so much it's made me healthy.
You'd fit out here in the Pacific Northwest. It's always gray and rainy. It'd
Oh,
fit
really?
right in. Oh yeah. It's
Yeah,
right
but
now. It's gray and rainy.
But he wanted
Okay.
a dry January. Well, it's sunny and warm here. But go back to that dry January and the non-drinking.
Yeah, that's
If you-
right. Dry January, like no booze the whole of January. Not a sniff.
I understand, but your wife does have a point, because if you do consume alcohol,
Yeah.
it does
Exactly.
take several days for you to see the effects of it not being in your system. Even when you
Okay.
drink alcohol, it takes several hours to process that alcohol, to have it removed from your system, never mind the side
Wow.
effects of alcohol in your body. I understand what you're saying, because I enjoy a good whiskey and a good smoked whiskey. And I was saying the other day, I have the smoker, the little Tigan or whatever it is smoker that you put on it, and I smoke it.
The
I
hat.
smoke some meat.
Oh,
It's so
ah.
nice. I'll send you a link to it afterwards. But I think they need non-alcoholic whiskey, right? We have mocktails. I enjoy mocktails now when we go to conferences or we go other places, because I can walk around feeling like I'm having a drink,
Yeah.
looking
It's
like
the-
I'm having a
It's
drink.
the experience. The cocktail experience is a huge amount of it. Is there like just like the anticipation and the arts, the drama of the preparation, and like if you go somewhere super fancy and they're carving the ice cubes and all this
Yes.
kind of jazz.
Well, that's it. With
yeah,
the round
definitely
ice
the
cubes, the square ice cubes.
That's right,
The
yeah.
fancy cocktails.
Yes.
Like what is it? Like a rusty nail or something like that with a big square. Old fashioned. Old fashioned is a go-to of
Old-fashioned.
mine.
I love an old fashioned.
Yeah.
And well,
If
Kris,
you're ever, Brad, I mean, have you been to Scotland?
that is on Scotland and Ireland is on my bucket list.
You gotta go.
I need to get to Europe, just even from a heritage point of view. I traced a lot of my family to Scotland and Ireland.
Okay.
So I think I'd like to get over there just to, everybody in America, not everybody, but a lot of people in America come from that portion of the country,
Sure.
considering that's where the original settlers came from. Well, depends on how you look at history before everybody starts getting on to me and saying, well, who came here first, who discovered it first, and doing all this other stuff. It's 2025. You have to be careful here. But I'm looking at a certain portion of history books, and it says that a lot of the settlers came from England. I guess there was a Revolutionary War and other things
Just
over here.
A very little quick thing before we carry. I wasn't able to put any blur on. There's the background? There's nothing horrendous in my background, is there? Normally, I always put the little blur on, so it's not like people can't see what I've got back there. But
it's always fun though when you have guests where that's the first thing you look. It's like, what do you have in the back?
Well, that's right.
You have Dune.
You find out I'm a huge nerd because I've got all the game stuff up here.
Yeah.
Which
you
games
have
are
Dune
those?
in there and Games Kingdom. It's like,
I can't see because
too small.
Well, it's too small for me because after we spoke with a previous guest, he told us about that Elgato prompter, which
I was at the airport when I was that was hilarious listening to you guys talking to Mark. That was brilliant. You guys were like, your tech does what? It's like, and he's got all the gadgets, and it was. I mean, Mark Smith is an incredible guy. He's very interesting to listen to. But that episode was especially funny because you guys were like kids in the sweet shop.
We were like kids,
and the whole we WhatsApped right about the you can just add another phone for another angle. Oh my god.
Yes, it was it changed. So after that episode, when we recorded, obviously it was released I think this week, but we recorded it several weeks ago. Sure. I binged Silo. After that, I ended up getting really sick, and that's the show that I put on. I think I was texting you about that. And I bought this Elgato prompter. I'm like, I have to stop talking to Mark.
Wow.
I've talked with him quite a bit over the past couple of
So what is the Elgato? Is it another screen? What is it exactly?
It's a teleprompter.
It's a teleprompter, but you can also put your screen on there. So I put this screen on there, and it has a camera behind the teleprompter. So if I wanted to scroll text, I could scroll text, or in this case, I have the application up where I can see both you and Kris, but I'm staring at the monitor and the camera is in the center but behind.
Right.
So it looks as if I'm looking at the camera.
Right. I mean, I don't have any fancy setup whatsoever. I've just got the laptop camera, and I always put the Teams window, in this case Riverside, in a browser, on the same screen. Because my other screens, if I ever have Teams over there, I'm looking here, it's that you're over there now, and
it distracted.
That annoys people. It's better to have the people on the screen where you're looking, right?
Yes, even if you're looking a little slightly off, but my hope is that it gives us, when I'm talking with someone, the recording will appear that I'm looking at whomever's watching it, but also when we're speaking, to have a better viewpoint instead of me looking down at the bottom and the camera's at the top or something. So far, I'm really pleased with it.
No one would notice it before because you know why? We edit that out. So, even if you look down all the time, no one would know.
Oh, really?
I won't say anything. Thank you. Thank you. But as we get into it, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. We really do appreciate it. I've been looking forward to speaking with you. Just
with the legends here, that first intro call, where you're just to check the tech and all the rest of it. I was like, wow, it's like Brad and Kris. It's like, wow, I'm really here with these guys, these amazing guys.
That's not us. That's you.
We're honored with their guests coming on. It's always fascinating to hear from their perspective.
Yes. We appreciate the time that everyone speaks with us or spends with us because it's fulfilling. I learn so much from the guests that we speak with, and we have such a wonderful community of people. And I'm so happy that technology affords us the opportunity to all connect from afar.
I think it's it's amazing you guys have the time to do it. I think it's the time commitment is big, but I learned so much from I listen to various different podcasts when I can. There's some great ones out there, and it's you learn so much from the kind of there's a little bit topical. Maybe it's the latest release wave. Maybe it's an old problem that maybe it's a new thing you never heard about. You always learn something. It's oh my god, yes, that will help me in the future to do great delivery for whoever, right?
Absolutely.
It's definitely time well spent. So thanks for providing an amazing service.
No, thank you, and thank you for participating. And before we get into talking about some great things, would you mind telling us a little bit about you?
Of course, yeah. So my name's Andy Wingate. I'm a recent Microsoft MVP for Business Central, which was, everyone says it's a huge surprise. It's like, well, you do have to apply. So how much of a surprise? But it really was a big surprise. So I'm really, really, honoured, humbled and honoured, as they say. But I genuinely am to join that. And so
congratulations on that, by the way.
Congrats.
I meant to put that. I did have the note that you were recent. It's sometimes I forget when someone received the MVP. You just know that they they have this
or greenhorn or whatever they call it, like fresh off the boat kind of scenario, right? Like
yes,
green.
Yes, a greenhorn. That's an old. I grew up hearing that saying in my area. By the way, it's a term for Well, we'll get backlash on that one too, but that's okay.
So that's I work for a Microsoft partner in the UK called Venture. I'm heading up the Business Central practice there. Just about 3 years before then, and I've been working for Microsoft, a couple of different Microsoft partners, Incremental Group, Telephonic Tech, and before that I was on the customer side. So I was like a head of IT, head of business systems type role, and I started working with Nav back in 2015 on the customer side, to deliver the solution for the business I worked for at the time. And we worked together with a partner in the UK, obviously, and I learned a huge amount. But I had also, I was in charge of all the stuff for that IT stuff for that company, so I was dealing with all sorts of different systems and just keeping the lights on type IT business systems. It was an SMB company, right? We're using that. Of course, we're an SMB company, and I didn't really have the time to kind of drill into one particular vendor. When I eventually made the choice to go onto the partner side, so that's my journey, end user to partner side, and I ended up working for a Microsoft partner because I'd had so much fun on these projects, and I got friendly with some of the. It was actually Mary Hunter from Columbus. She was the UK MD for Columbus back in the day, I suppose, and she said, Andy, you should really, you'd love it. They'd love you. Why don't you go and do it? I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I can. Blah blah blah. All those worries that you have. Anyway, and then I went across, and they immediately threw me into tricky, difficult problems. But I'd come from a real boots on the ground operational business, and I was like the first thing you do when you get in the room is okay, guys, don't worry, whatever problems you get, we'll solve them. Okay, I'll be here to solve the problems, and you just bring the people on the journey of belief first, then you worry about how you're going to solve the problems. And of course, you solve the problem. Sometimes
they threw you into the fire.
That is,
they threw you into the fire right away.
Now, that is great. You go along the journey of belief, and then the rest will follow. So it's like, don't worry,
we got
you do have to have that belief, and it's
awesome.
An interesting story.
Also, as well as having fun on tricky projects, which I love doing. But I also was like, oh, Microsoft, so right, I might as well, user groups. Oh, there's one in Cambridge. I'm live just outside Cambridge. There's a user group in Cambridge. I'll pop along, and I popped along to the user group, and I happened to see on that day, Laura Graham Brown was there. She's a Power BI MVP, I think. Angeliki was there. She's now an MVP. There was a number of other great a whole crew of people, really really keen people, and they did the talks on this, that, and the other. It was all D365 stuff, not Power, there's no Business Central user groups, right? So it was all D365 Power Platform, but they were so keen and engaged, and they were like, oh, Andy, are you coming to South Coast Summit, which is a big free conference that operates in the south of the country, and you should come along, it's free, blah blah blah. So they kind of really encouraged me to engage. I was like, wow, they're so welcoming. And then I went to these bigger ones, and it's I couldn't believe it. It was unbelievable. They're all from competitive organizations, big organizations that are competitors, right? But they're all sharing okay, everyone in the room, here's this problem that you will have on your projects. Here's how I solve it. This is a pretty sweet way to do it. I was like, wow, they're sharing the secret sauce of how to make everyone's lives easier. And I just, suddenly I discovered for the first time, it had always been there, but I discovered this whole Microsoft community thing for the first time. And it blew my socks off, right?
Our community is amazing.
welcoming the people were, how willing they are to share all the stuff, and getting chatting with these like big names. I was like, wow, sort of like, come up, I'm allowed to speak to you, and they're like, of course you are, sort of thing, right? Silly stuff like that.
But that is one of the great things about the community that we have, is it's so large, but it feels so small, and everyone, I think, now has, for the most part, exactly what you had mentioned. They want to share. They want the product to be successful. They want everyone to be successful because it enriches the application and enriches the community. And all those successful implementations helps anybody that works with it, either from the customer side or the partner side. But speaking of that, so you made the journey from the customer side over to the partner side. So you worked with managing an internal system, and then you made the transition over to a partner. What were some of the considerations you had for moving from a customer to a partner, to have you go from, I understand you had mentioned that internally you were sort of like the jack of all trades, as I'll say, is you were responsible for IT, which I know how sometimes, depending upon the size of the organization, you may have more than one hat. You could be a developer, you could be a functional consultant, project manager, or all of those together combined. So what were the considerations you had when you were moving from a customer to a partner?
Yeah, sure. So I had, being completely honest with you, I'd reached the top as far as I could go in the organisation in that particular company. It's a large agricultural cooperative in the UK, and SMB company, and I kind of had pitched to the. I kind of pitched like to the board, like, for IT director role, and they're like, it's like, no, that's not going to work here, sort of thing. And they made the right decision. They were bringing in a finance director. They didn't have a finance director, so they brought in a finance director role to like help improve the business efficiency and performance, all the rest of it. So they definitely made the right call. So I was kind of like, okay, cool. Like, I've had an amazing time here, 12 years almost. It's time to move on. And I kind of had two thoughts in my mind. One was, find an IT director or CTO role in another end user side, or move to the Microsoft side. And it was it was other people from the partner side that kind of really convinced me to go down the partner route. One of which was Mary Hunter. Another one was Nikki Stewart, who is she was my account manager at Columbus, and there was various other interactions with the consultants. The project team I had at Cambridge Online that then became Columbus, and there's not, like, on the delivery side, there's plenty of hard work and stress to deal with, right? But those guys, they also had a bit of fun, and I was on one call with Chris Nichols, and we were like, problem with Jet on-prem, like, can you imagine it? Like, so it's crazy, right? And we pulled in some other consultants, like, oh, try this, try that. And I was like, wow, these guys, like, they're working together, they help each other out. Like, you can probably overcome any problem with this. So, I was kind of convinced to make the jump. So, like a little bit of a sideways step. Oh, and also, I had the most amazing help from I tried to apply various different places, didn't really get too far, but when I got in touch with a really good recruiter called Philippa, she helped me, she helped me find the partner who valued the no consultancy experience, right, on the face of it, but I had a lot of end user experience, and I'd used Nav, I'd done a couple of deployments, done a whole load of crazy development stuff, right? So she was able to kind of find the partner that was hiring for that kind of person at the time. So that was a real, I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't sort of those people. So I'm really grateful. And that was the process.
Curious about your perception. Did your perception change coming from from an end user? As an end user, I came from an end user as well, so I had a perception of what consultants do. And then when you come into doing consulting, was there like I was like, oh, that makes sense why they're like that, or that makes sense they do this kind of process?
That's a really great question, actually. I've never thought about that. So what changed? I think, I needed to backfill missing bits. So I'd used Nav in a particular way for a particular organization. There were whole chunks of the app that I never used, right? So I needed to learn those. I was really good on certain bits, and other bits were missing. but also, so yeah, so I was a little bit worried about that, and I guess something that changed my perception was that actually you don't need to know all of it, because you need to have a rich team. You don't need to be an expert in warehouse and marketing or whatever. Like, pretty useful to know finance in and out, right? But you don't need to be an expert in all the other stuff. Okay, so that's, I guess that changed a little bit. I can't think of anything else that really jumped out like a sore thumb. I had some really great colleagues at Incremental, when I first joined there, and I saw how they operated, and I just learned so much from these people. The way, a little bit more care on, when you're writing a requirements document about, what's in scope, what's out of scope, being super clear, and also I guess I'm not afraid to have difficult conversation, and immediately learning, it's far better if you're with a client to say, right now, right guys, this has happened. Let you have the difficult conversation straight away. They're not going to want to hear it. It's a little bit nerve-wracking, all the rest of it. But you have the difficult conversation. Don't let it grumble on until the money's all run out. And then it's massive change request. Everyone's surprised, and everyone's hair is on fire. Don't do that. Even though you avoid the conflict. You got to be honest. People appreciate honesty. No project has no problems, right? And if you figure that out, please tell me. But there's always some kind of a problem. It's not about the problem. It's about being honest, and figuring out the way we get past the bump in the road, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and
people,
there is critical, I think, in a project, is, as you had mentioned, the honesty, the trust, and what you have moving forward. And like you had mentioned, it's oftentimes better. Can't even say often. I would say it's always better to have those difficult conversations early versus late. So if you can foresee there's going to be a challenge, having that conversation, as difficult as it may be, on either side, because also, if someone comes to me and tells me that it's from the side of going through the implementation that you've uncovered a problem, or either direction, it's the one who's talking about the problem, the one who has the problem, I guess you can say, I would rather know early on so that we could work together to solve it and not have it be so significant in the future. And then you find out, like you said, if the money has all run out, the budget's blown, now we have a lot of change requests. Now everyone's like, well, why didn't you tell me so long ago? It's just having that open and honest communication, which I think is important. But to go back to the customer and the partner, first, something that you had mentioned, like everyone's having a good time and fun. We all do that because that hides the tears, right?
So, that is true.
So you have to laugh and have a good time because that pain and suffering that you may be going through, nobody can see, right? It's a little bit cheeky from saying you should be honest on everything, but no, there is a lot of work that goes into ERP implementations and product implementations and dealing with multiple projects. And the approach is just, you can either complain and cry about it, or you can laugh and have a good time and move through it with a smile on your face, is the way I look at it.
Totally.
To similar to what Kris had mentioned, how do you think moving from a customer, or do you think moving from a customer to a partner has helped you with Business Central implementations? So the experience that you had gained from a customer, do you think it was advantageous for you to have that experience as a partner? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, for definitely, I say yes to that. I think that I think one of the elements that you get when you worked in one company for a long time, and you like part of the furniture there or whatever, and you're involved in projects over the years, and it kind of it wires your brain differently. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, I don't know. But I'm putting a project in, I'm working with these people in my mind forever. Okay, so it really needs to. I can't just get to the implementation finish line and then we're done. Thanks very much. No, I'm going to work with these people for going forwards. So you've got to get to the finish line, and it has to genuinely deliver beneficial change to everybody. Otherwise they come and knock on your door, and it's no, the thing's still not working, Andy. It's no, my day's worse now. Why did you do that change? So you have that mindset from the very word go that the success criteria for the project is not just the finish line of the project. It's the genuinely making a difference, and different projects of different sizes. What does that actually look like? Of course, that's a big variable in there, but it's that I think having that mindset, I think you tend to have more of a mindset like that. Than I think it helps foster that mindset. I think that's a really healthy mindset to have, that kind of looking ahead, long-term benefit. What else is there? I think also, and because of that, you have to really engage and build the relations with all the people who this change is going to affect. So change management, I think, when you've got a whole team of shop floor people, like operations people, boots on the ground people, they don't care about the buzzwords. They just care about, I want to get my job done on time, correctly. What do you mean we're not signing a sheet and it's now on a handheld? Is it going to help me do it faster? Is it going to help me be more accurate? What's in it for me? You've always got to consider the what's in it for me for everybody, because sometimes on a holistic view, sometimes a lot of small companies often end up, perhaps this is true or not, but really driven by the operations, because that's what earns the money. So sometimes the whole processes are totally focused on the operations, and then the back office admin and accounting and all that kind of stuff, they're picking up the pieces left, right and centre. And sometimes, when you put in a proper system and you kind of look at the whole holistic thing and you make the whole thing efficient from end to end, sometimes the operations guys need to do a little bit more steps and clicks and things like that. And so there's a real you've really got to sell that one, the wider benefits, and how to figure out how to do that. So I think, does that answer the question? Maybe
so empathy. There's some empathy, because you know how it feels on one side. Because you're right, as a client, you kind of handle just your day to day, and then you have a single entity or company that you're handling. When you go to the consulting side, you understand that they have to do day to day job. And then at the same time, you're also implementing in a brand new ERP. That's a huge change. So it's a good reminder when you're a consultant. It's I understand.
But when you do, you have that perspective of what's important for a user, as Andy had mentioned. It's what is the change? What are some of the conversations they have? Because the conversations from the consulting point of view, again, a partner is going to partner with you through the journey, but everybody has different concerns or may have different focal points. As Andy had mentioned, it's what is in it for me to make my life easier, I guess you could say. Everybody has that selfish, but also that may be important to a business that from a different lens as a partner or someone working with an implementation, you may not understand. So it's... I
remember so when I was on the end user side, the transport manager, I had a great relationship with the transport manager there, and we did a lot of development around the transport. I was working in a logistics company effectively, and in the peak of harvest, it was an agricultural business, and the peak of harvest, 600 lorry movements in the day. Anyway, so we talked about the click economy, on the new system, how many clicks do I have to do to go from end to end? And we kind of, I had to promise him a click economy budget, a decreasing budget on clicks. And it's there's a few more clicks here, but to go end to end, actually the clicks do come down. So it's oh, okay, Andy, well, we'll do it then.
I've been to that before.
It is, because it is, you brought up an interesting point there as well, because when you go through an ERP implementation, it's important to take a look at the entire process, because you may save a step early on in the stream, which creates more work downstream. Or as you had mentioned, you may create one additional click for a person to function somewhere early in the process, but you're saving hours for somebody on the back end. So it's important to really explain or walk through the overall process and the benefits of the process, and also the downstream effects of any process changes you make, because that is where, in my experience, Kris kind of chuckles, I find a lot of challenges that implementations have. It's, I can make it so much easier for the sales order entry process, for example. But by making it so much easier, now I just totally shifted the way we have to pick and lay out the warehouse. So now it's saved one person 5 minutes. For example, this is figuratively. Now I added hours in the requirement for more manpower, because I made it so much easier for one person, but not everybody else. So
I had to laugh on that click budget. Because the moment you mentioned that, it just triggered this old memory of mine, where one of my first nav implementation where I was working with somebody in the customer service side, and they were upset that they had to press an extra button, even though it was going to save them manual process on the back end. But I remember having to speak to them like a couple days. We were killing days just because to convince this person. It's like, it's one click, I understand, but here's the result. Like, these are the things that you'd be saving time. It was fun.
Yeah, managing expectations. A recent project, we had there was a client there, and it's kind of like, I expect the system to do this, I expect the system to do that, and it's managing expectations is really important, and people's, and one of you, I think Brad, you mentioned it earlier, like understanding that the end user client people, like especially finance teams, like month end every single month, and getting their time. So it's, as a consultant, I always the first thing I say after any workshop on the email, like where you go back with all the actions, and now the AI generated meeting notes, which saved me a whole pile of time.
Exactly.
Like, thank you so much for your time, because you have to be, their time is precious. They've got they've just done a half a day workshop that helps me do my job to deliver the stuff or whatever, and then I went half a day behind on their whatever they were supposed to be doing on a normal day, without this extra project stuff that they've got to do.
That's a key point, because that is when structuring, we can go down so many tangents. We also, Kris, need to have an episode of implementation horror stories. We'll have to get everybody, or maybe one of these conferences.
I know.
One of these conferences will have to
It'll never end, man.
Corner everybody, because you both made me think of some crazy situations that I've been in over the course of my career. But you had hit on a key point there, that when you're going through an implementation, as far as scheduling training or setting expectations, and thankfully I'm a big fan of like the in-client page scripting to help with testing and user acceptance, a separate story. But to have understanding that individuals also have to complete their job as well as go through the training. And this is not just from the partner side, it's also from an organizational point of view. If you're going to go through the undertaking of implementing an ERP system, whether it's a migration to a new system, migration to a new version of the existing system, or an upgrade, depending upon the terminology, it does take time. And the time is important so that it can help make for the efficiency of the business. Because if you don't take the time to do it and have an understanding of people need to work, and either shift some of that if possible, or afford them the opportunity to properly test, it could be far more damaging in the back end. Right? Because no one really may know how to do what they need to do, or they may not test it properly or review it properly to make sure it does exactly what they need. And those few minutes that you think you're saving because you're trying to get some things done, or for whatever reason, it can be costly in the sense of time, or even fulfillment of product, I guess you could say, downstream. So
I remember when I was back on the customer side, and we had implemented a change, and the invoices processing had gone wrong, and there was this big backlog of invoices, and I was kind of like fighting with like the senior team. It's like, right, I need this person, I need them for 3 days to do the thing. And it's like, well, if you do that, are the backlog of invoices going to get bigger? It's like, yes, but we will fix the problem. If you can't, we've got like the place is on fire, and we need to turn the gas off. Like otherwise the fire's never going to go out. And it's kind of like that. I guess that's a common thing, right? Sometimes the problem is going to get worse, and again, communicating, right? The problem is going to get worse. We can solve the problem. We've got the solution. Hooray! Everyone's right. The problem is going to get worse before it gets better. Oh, but we will solve it. And here's the time frame. Oh, okay, right. Get on with it, sort of thing. Like you've got to communicate that stuff, right?
There's nothing more proper than proper communication and effective communication. I can't stress that enough to anybody. It goes back to difficult or simple conversations. Proper communication. I mean by proper, ensuring if you're delivering a message that the individual receiving the message receives it as intended. Right. So sometimes it's somebody going to say something, and on the flip side, they may hear it, but not hear it the way that you said it. So it's oftentimes beneficial, I found, to make sure you have that back and forth to ensure that they can explain back to you what you said, basically, not truly technical, but an understanding of it. So with your Business Central experience, are you more on the functional side or on the technical side? Do you do any development, or you work primarily on the implementations?
So my background is kind of IT. So I used to work in Azure, on kind of the Active Directory, or Entra as it now is, M365 admin. I wouldn't say I'm a super duper Azure techie guy, like with like complicated resources. That I can spin up a VM and stuff like that. That was from my what they talk about, like accidental DBA, like you're the accidental database administrator, because the only one that knew anything about it. So that was part of my role that I used to have. I'm definitely more functional than technical. I love doing the AL development. I love the ability. So I've got this. There's low code, right? And there's pro code. The proper developers. I have massive respect for all the developers I've worked with, and I've worked with some real legends. And it's kind of like it just amazes me sometimes how they can create like functionality and all that. It's just truly incredible. But I think there is an area in the middle. It's a real big thing of mine where, like, simple dev. Okay, I think that every functional consultant should know how to create an AL project. And move a queue tile on the role center. We want the Continua document stuff, but we want it on this role center that you made for us. Don't have to wheel out a developer for that. That is so easy to go and look and see what the code is on the Continua role center, drop it onto the other one. Small extension. There's the whole rules of the road thing that, when you're dabbling as a functional consultant with a little bit of development, it's so important to agree the rules of the road with your development team. Where are the repos? I'm sure it was you guys were talking, or it was maybe Steve Endo talking about like nightmares of like open source, the source code and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
you got to have the rules of the road.
Yes. That's a whole. We could. You could spy with me there, but I just like to take it back to a few key points that you're saying. So it's good to have an understanding of the application and development. And you're mentioning low code, no code. I'd like to circle back to that, which was kind of a lead in with where I was going with the conversation. But I also think from the development point of view, developers need to understand the functionality of the application because it helps them create solutions. But also, to your point, where you're talking about moving things around, it's important to know, is a modification required? Is it a personalization? Is it a customization? Or is it something that we may have to use another tool such as low code, no code? So there's a balance of, I can do anything, I can create anything with development versus architecting a solution for an implementation to meet the requirements.
And we had a good balance. We kind of did this simple dev policy, and because we had all the source code in Azure DevOps, we happen to use, right? I haven't quite got across to AL. GitHub, and and then so you got the pull request, so you can review the pull request, and a low risk pull request is one that doesn't change the ultimate database schema. You're kind of, it's a surface change, something like that, and you have the ability to talk to developers briefly, as opposed to pulling one off and having them do all the crunching on the keyboard for simple dev stuff, right? There's so many great tools out there, like the Waldo templates and the AZAL wizards for API pages, for example. Oh my God. The standard API pages, vendor, 144 fields on the table, 40 on the API page. It's it turns out I did want reason code or purchaser code. That's a pretty handy field, but it's not in the standard. How easy is it if you know how to? Wizard, API page, Bosh. Obviously there's considerations if it's a critical workflow, or if it's just for a report you need, or for a simple, you want to do something in Power Automate, but the field's missing. So that's another example of maybe a simple dev thing. But you've got to be in the team. You've got to have your developer buddies close by to, check on you from time to time, so that you don't do the madness and break the thing.
No, I tend to agree with you, and that's where I'm going. It's you do need to have, as you said, the rules of the road to make sure that you have proper management of whatever you're going to do, whether it's a source code modification, or even if you're going to move something over, as you had mentioned, Power Automate, or if you wanted to have an additional API page to work with Power Automate, just to make sure that you have all that there and everyone's aware of what's being done if you need to address an issue or reconstruct or do something. With having a basic understanding of development, goes into development. This is another big one. I have these questions and I think about where Business Central now, you can make modifications with extensions, or you extend it. You're not modifying the base application, you're extending it. Where there may be some functionality that isn't in there that's unique to a particular business. They have an edge case use. Thankfully, the application has a lot of feature and functionality. But now we can also connect with other systems. So there's Power Automate for you to be able to do tasks with workflows. There's Power Platform where you could do other pages or cards to interface with Business Central. Where do you see ERP software in development and implementation going in the future with all of this stuff available to bolt together?
Great question. A lot of the community stuff that I go and visit, it's not BC focused. It's all Power Platform and D365 apps. That's the major focus of the community things. And ever since the first one I went along there, I'm like, oh, how can I get this stuff to like help me with Business Central and figure out those like. And I'm kind of also thinking with the like boots on the ground, but it needs to actually make my life better today, in this moment on this task I'm doing, sort of thing. So it's kind of like I think there's a huge opportunity to leverage these tools. There was for example, a recent Phil Kermine. I've been chatting with Phil. He's a developer. He does like connectors. He does custom connectors. Is one of his things that he does. And so Business Central, then a custom connector into Power Platform to achieve some goal, right? But it's reusable. And for me, that's like, oh, that's really handy, because if you just go. The BC world there's a lot of BC is like, there's lots of developers for BC, and the real kind of heroes of BC, they're all developers, all the great guys and girls. And so if you give a problem to someone who's just always solved stuff with development, then of course they bosh it out straight with development. But this kind of the modular approach that getting a little bit more time with Power Automate so that you can expand and like. I don't know if it's the same in the US, but in the UK, we've got like a resource shortage. So developers are like, there's more functional people. I think you can get into functional consulting more easy than you can get into development, because like development is for like the true geniuses, right? Whereas with functional, you kind of like, you can go from an end user, to a consultant, to become a consultant. That journey, I think, is less pain than becoming a like full-blown developer. It's a different kettle of fish. Okay. So, can we solve the resource problem by doing less stuff through just pure development? Some stuff, yeah, for sure. You need to all the ISV apps. They're all true development, right? That's not Power Automate stuff. But there is this grey area, and I always try to. I go along to all the some of the D365 meetings and tell people about Business Central. Oh, you do Business Central? Like they, like wow, like never heard. Like what is that? Does anyone care about Business Central? Like yeah, they do. And kind of like and engage, and actually Microsoft have been pushing Business Central super duper hard, and so they're like, oh, like Business Central, okay, right. And so I've been starting to do more stuff together with the community, and it's like, how can we do Power Pages and Business Central? How can we use Power Automate to like hook into the admin API and do something handy for a customer? Like there was a recent one which was do a fresh. It was like on Nav, it was on-prem Nav. They're like, oh, well, we've got a script that makes a fresh copy of the database every night, so we've got a test environment. It's like, what do we do that in Power Automate? Like, and yeah, by getting a little help from one of my Power Automate buddies, Power Platform, that they help me like with the API side of it, and then yeah, we can set up a fresh copy sandbox overnight, automatic, don't have to do anything. So every time I talk to that side of the community, I'm always trying to like tease out, because also it's there's a lot to learn, and low code is not no code. And honestly, like you need to get the syntax on the bit where it is code. It's like you're straight in full Monty code on the syntax. So OData filters, like who knew? I didn't know how to write those, or like how you're supposed to interpret it. And there's like the low code bit there's like these bear traps of like full on tiny box coding, I think they call it. Like you need to know how to do the tiny box coding. At least in AL Dev, the whole thing's in code, and you can like see examples and you can follow it through. Whereas with low code, dragging and dropping things maybe, and then bosh, right, you've got a bit of code here, better be spot on or no dice.
It does go back to the importance of a team, and I forget who said it, and I know someone said it. It's low code. Low code, no code is not no code. It's somebody else's code. So it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's low code. But you're stressing, I think, to me, and what I'm hearing is the emphasis of having what you said early on as a quality team, because the expansion of the application in the ecosystem, it's difficult to be an expert in everything. So it's important to know who you can rely on and have awareness of what's available to where you can go ask the questions to have a proper solution. To me, it's very difficult to keep up with the application, Power Platform, everything that you have that you could use to satisfy a requirement for an implementation. So it is
I think
important.
it's much more important now to collaborate than ever before, because now, like you guys said, there's a lot more tools to consider. And maybe, as I think Andy had mentioned, it's like, the old school developers, it's like, oh, we'll just develop, right? Now you're going to have to kind of slow down a little bit to see, okay, your developer should be aware of the other, software tools out there that will consume your code. So if you're structuring your code, you got to you got to think beyond than just providing a result. You got to think about how can other tools consume my solution. Like you said, you can create a solution and code it, but you also have to consider, okay, if a client decides to use Power Automate or they use Power Apps, I want those tools to be able to see my solution. And it requires a good functional consultant to work with a developer, and vice versa, to consider the business aspects of that, not just the solution that you're just building. So you got to think outside the box now and a bigger picture.
And I just thought of something from a little bit earlier, which is around the like, oh, are you a functional or are you a technical person? And one of the things that
that's a loaded question, by the way. I just want to let you know. These I know we don't talk about this stuff, but some of these questions really are unintentionally loaded.
I'm trying to find the time to kind of go through the learn stuff. Maybe I'll pass the MB 820 one day, but there's a lot for me to learn, a huge amount. And it's a lot simpler for me to have a team, go to the experts. A lot of the recent content that I did, I was kind of trying to take it to the next level, and the only way I could take it to the next level was actually speak to someone. So, I spoke to one of my colleagues, Lee, who helped me with some AL development stuff that was just beyond my capability. I've got an example of it now. Great. I spoke to AJ, who helped me with some Power Platform stuff. He showed me some stuff. I'm like, oh my God, yeah. I never would have. It would take me forever to sort of figure that out. And you leapfrog your learning when you talk to other people. But it all comes back to, for a functional consultant, I think because I had in the older days SQL, and we used SSRS. We used to write a lot of TSQL for getting data. So understanding databases, which you kind of if you were just when never used any system before on this, here's Business Central, would you even know what a database is? Because you don't even see I guess you've got the tables in the. It's just if you've never used SQL before, perhaps you would perceive the whole of the Business Central back-end architecture differently. Anywho, when end users are asking for interesting requirements and kind of well, we need to do this, it needs to do that, and blah 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 blah. It's useful to understand. Can we extend that table? Do we need a new table? It's useful to have a kind of an understanding, because often there's a number of ways to get to the outcome, and some of those ways are tons of extra tables and pages, and some of them are less tables and pages. We'll do it this way. Oh, does this meet your requirements? Well, I guess it does. Why have you done it that way? Well, it's because it's a bit simpler to. I know that will make the developers' lives a bit easier, sort of thing. So I think that's really important when you are getting to that final 2% of whatever process, and it's Business Central out the box does this, but it doesn't do that. Oh, how are we going to solve that? And it's kind of sometimes people are throwing their hands up and saying, well, we can't use, it's unusable, and these sorts of things, and you need to.
Oh my gosh!
That goes back
more
to the change management and the user adoption. That it's the path of least resistance, and it's so much easier to give up sometimes instead of embrace it, because you know what you knew, you don't know what the future is, and then you become comfortable with it. Then that becomes what you know. So it's a challenge there.
I'm pretty sure it could have been with Mark, where you talked about that there was a special report, the president's report, and it had been handed
yes
to lots of different people. Turns out the president just put it in the bin, I mean, that's a great kind of hilarious anecdote. But the reality is that with Business Central, there's so many, analyze mode, for example.
Love that feature.
Just live list. There are certain things where, oh, we had this report. We must get this. This is a day zero report. We've got to have this report to answer that particular question. Well, actually, it turns out in Business Central, if you go to like the purchase lines and filter in a certain way and turn on pivot mode and save that tab, does that not give you the outcome? Oh yeah, kind of it does. But how do I print that? But like, what about the answer? Like, everyone can get to this. Oh yeah, I suppose they can. Everyone in the whole organization can get to this through Teams. They don't even need a license. Oh right, really? Oh well, okay, fine. It's that rethinking the stuff.
It really is, because of in an age of, you had mentioned the reports where now you can see it online. It gives you what you need. Do you really need
like live
that?
list.
Do you need that report?
Yeah.
Yes. So, gosh, I have so many more questions that I have for you because of where you are and what you do. You're talking about analysis mode, or with analysis mode, I believe, I'm going to try to date myself. I think it came out 2024 wave 1 or 23 wave 2, about that time. It's been out for a while, and I have enjoyed it ever since it came out. And it's a saver, and this is what I even emphasize to some individuals on implementations. It's a matter of collecting the proper data so that you can analyze it. Instead of having to have a separate report, every little thing that you do, you can create these views and save them. What are some other underutilized features or unknown features do you think of Business Central? And I ask this because every month we get new features and functionality, and it's important to keep up with it. But from a partner's point of view, you have some that are online, so they're relatively close to the latest release, depending upon their update schedule. You have some on-premises implementations where they may not have migrated to the latest implementation, which is its own challenge in itself. But based on the implementations, what you see, what are some of the underutilized or unknown features of Business Central? Or if you can't think of those, what are some of the most beneficial features that users can get from the application the most, from your point of view?
Great question. So let me think. I mean, when I did the jump from kind of on-prem to then the partner side, where we were really just delivering SaaS, I was kind of like, oh my goodness, like, why were we still on-prem? there were so many great features. I got like a whole load of stuff. I think 2022, what version of BC would that have been? Well, anyway, whatever, it wasn't like 14. It was kind of like a little bit past then. And there was a whole load of stuff. I mean,
I think
the
18,
classic crowd pleaser is like change dimension. So like anyone who's going, I always bring that up if we're doing a nav to BC migrate, and like and like one of the little things I'll throw in there is like, oh, and by the way, everyone in the finance team, look at this, change dimension. What, you mean we don't have to journal everything out and back in again if we just want to change the dimension? Correct. And it's got a full audit, blah, blah, blah. It's all fine. And they're like, the crowd go wild sort of thing. So but that one obviously has been in BC SaaS for quite some time now. I always love to show people the access with M365 through Teams. In my kind of demo team environment, I always kind of show like, oh, let's share this sales order and have a conversation in Teams. Isn't that fun? Like, oh, that's handy. But wait, here's a team and I've pinned customers, vendors, sales orders, like, by the way, everyone in the entire organization can access these read only. They don't need a BC license, So that's I think that's a good one to call out to, especially where you've got people on the call who are concerned around return on investment and all the rest of it. Like, we can get you access to this information. It's live. You're all working from the same version of the truth. So there's the Teams thing. I think I don't know how, it's difficult to know how much it's used in the wider world. Like, I know Microsoft have got like no end of telemetry, and they share from time to time a few little snippets, but it would be amazing, wouldn't it, to get see all of the stuff. I mean, they really collect the telemetry. I remember they must do, because Kenny at one point said, like, there's a certain tooltip that people look at more, so they're obviously like confused by that field. I can't remember which one it was, but they knew that more, like a lot, there was a big spike in looking at the tooltip to try and understand what that field is. So, for sure, Microsoft collect the how people are using the system.
I would like to see that, just to see which features and functionality are used the most. And it could not be it's a double-edged sword with that, because you could say, well, we'll put more investment into the features that are used the most, because there's the most benefit. But also, just because a feature is used a lot doesn't mean that it's not of benefit. It could be that someone doesn't know about it. So you'd almost have to go through the process of, let's look at some of the underutilized features, see what an education process could be to see if there is some benefit. Because again, a lot of features and functionality come out, and if somebody's not staying current with the features and functionality, or thinking of ways how they could adopt the new feature within their business, it would go unutilized. So I would really enjoy seeing something like that. I wish they could do that. And to go back to a point you made, it is true with the ERP software. Everyone spends so much time, relative or how you get it, collecting all of the data. Right. It is so much data is collected if you understand the architecture of Business Central, which is amazing. Now I'm happy to see there's a lot of emphasis on getting it out. Right now we have all this ability to do the analysis views. We can do the Power BI reports. We can have a number of other ways for us to be able to get the data out, which is wonderful.
And another really great area is telemetry. Another one of my like weekend projects is to get better at KQL. And it's actually, I went to a talk in the Scottish Summit on KQL from one of the people, and it's pretty straightforward actually. You can learn it. It's no more difficult than SQL or something like that.
I don't think so.
I think that's underutilized. I always try to sort of sell it to the IT teams for clients and say, like, guys, like, look at this, you got a dashboard of all the errors. Look at this, you got a dashboard of all the logins and your daily activity. And I think, to really take it to the next level, and especially if you've got like big APIs and integrations and all that kind of stuff, I think it's a must for those, because where you can see the long running processes and the API calls that failed and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of critical for that stuff. But you've got to spin up like a resource in Azure, and it might cost you a few pounds per month or whatever. So I think that one perhaps is underutilized. I'm sure the people that use it well are really glad.
Telemetry to me is one of those underutilized and misunderstood. It's one of those, there's a lot of information there. It's just a matter of making sure you know what to pull out when you need it, because to me, in some cases, it could be a proactive or preemptive indicator of something where simple. There's a number of ways to automate the job queue notifications. There's ways to,
right.
Kris published something on it recently explaining how you could set up with Power Automate. But even with telemetry, you could get the job queue failures, and you can alert and notify somebody through App Insights that the job queue had failed. Something so simple as that. There are a lot of noisy events, though. I understand the reason for them, but I always monitor within the table, just for you said, for the space and size, because one day something shows up and it was like, purchase order this had posted, purchase order this had posted. I'm like, we really don't need to collect all of those and put it into our storage because of the amount of space. Someone may need it, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying it's important to keep up with it and to see all of the events that they add with each release, and then take a look at the dimensions that they offer with some of those.
Let me ask the both of you, and I haven't really played much with telemetry, and I am curious though, because telemetry, once you get the data, you kind of have to translate and kind of read through that. And I am curious if you guys heard from anyone where you could take telemetry and maybe have Copilot kind of summarize. It's like, hey, this, they're not using this area too much, or they're using this area of this, and it gives you suggestions, rather than have a human aspect of like having to translate that and having to go through the whole thing, and just have Copilot do that for you, so you can have like an automated report that says, hey, in the past month, here's what they did. And it's like summarizing your meeting, right? Like, have you heard from anyone have done that
personally
before?
I haven't seen anybody using Copilot to do something that you had mentioned like that from.
Or maybe it's a challenge for anybody that's listening. That would be really cool, because then how much time that would save you if it
Andy,
takes
what are
all
you
that
doing
information.
This weekend?
I'm actually, my plan for this weekend is a short video on the Power BI multiple companies thing. That was just a short, easy blog. That came up in a chat group, and it's like, actually, it wasn't short. So I'm taking it easy this weekend. But if we're going to do challenges, I would love to know the answer to this next one. Okay. So the challenge that I'd love to find the answer for is process mapping. So inside Power Platform, you've got the Process Explorer. I can't remember what it's called exactly. And Microsoft bought a couple of different firms that do this like process mapping thing, where it kind of like has the process flow of the time people spend on different pages and all that kind of stuff. I would love to figure out a way to take all the telemetry and pump it into that part of Power Platform to get this whole view of, you know, this department in this office. Here's all the ways they went through the system. They spent this much time doing a draft invoice. They spent this much time posting it. Some of the, you know, this many documents got credited. This many documents went for approval. This many. Have you guys seen that, like the process map thing in Power Platform?
I have not seen it. I thought you were asking about something different, but so you're looking for more statistical analysis of the processes within the application versus the process
it gives you,
that
like,
they
the
follow.
full kind of map view of like and like, yeah, statistics like this of all, you know, and you can have like time spent. How much time does it take to complete a document? Right, this team, they did 100,000 documents and the average time was 20 minutes or 5 days. This team did, you know, 1 million documents and their average time was less. They figured out a way to do it more efficiently. You know, and it's a tool inside. I better just look it up.
You could, I mean, you could take your performance profiler and just kind of go through that, and then take the results and maybe have Copilot summarize that.
But you would have to do a lot of logging with the performance profiler. With the ability to schedule it now, you could schedule it for users, but I think that would add an additional burden.
I mean, even if you're just capturing it for the process component of what it typically goes through. I mean, maybe just run it one time and at least give you an idea. I mean, not run it every time, but that's a good challenge.
I think it's a good challenge. I'd like to see it. But,
on top of the telemetry, right?
On top
I would love to see someone do that.
Andy will have all these challenges. He'll have them all done. We definitely will have to have you back in a few weeks to see the results of your challenges. Another point.
Process mining is the term.
The process. The term. Yeah.
Okay.
That's I think that's. I would love to get more Power Automate stuff connected up with BC to leverage all of those tools there. But I'd love to see, like, there's a couple of things I'd love to see, like BC kind of feeding into process mining, BC feeding into Fabric One Lake, you know, without having to do a kind of community supported tool. There's a few things out there that would be good to see in the future.
Yeah, I have to take a look at some of the telemetry in more detail to see what I transform out typically versus what's there. I know we can do the long running processes and such to see what's running. I don't know if it tracks what actually is running for each case to be able to put that together. I know you have the time for it, and then even when it logs the long performance, it does it when it gets over the threshold, which can be arbitrary as well too. One other thing that you had mentioned before that I wanted to ask you about, because I know you're involved in, you talked about the ability for talent in the community. There's a need for functional consultants, developers, depending on where you're at. Here over in the United States, I think we often say, and we talk and we find, you know, we prefer to buy before we build in a sense, whereas on the other side of the pond, it's oftentimes we prefer to build before we buy. But okay. there is a lack of, or a shortage, I don't want to say a lack, but there is a shortage of talented individuals with the Business Central application taking off, in my opinion. I mean, the number of people using the application, number of organizations using the application, it does require more individuals who have an understanding of the application, in my opinion, both from the customer point of view to be able to use it and manage it internally, as well as from the partner point of view. I know one other thing that you and I had spoken before you're involved in is the Reskill Program.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm not really involved as such, but I'm really interested in it as that's my journey. But yeah, the Microsoft, run this Reskill program in the UK and various other countries. I think like in America and, you know, across Europe as well. And yeah, I think that's it's great to see that investment from the mothership, right? Microsoft is kind of, you know, putting all this investment into the platform. It really kind of shows they're betting the future, and the future is BC colored, right? They've created this program. I think it's a fabulous program. Look, you know, we're hoping to get engaged where I work to help build the team here to get those end users, skill them up, you know, on a formal training thing, get them up to the standard for Business Central across the piece, and get them onto projects, get them billable, get them delivering great, get them doing great delivery. You know, I think it's a great way to if you're a little bit nervous, if you're on the end user side, it is a bit of a changing jobs is always right. Can be stressful, I think. And going into something unknown, into a different market, doing a different delivery, everyone has those fears, like the like the imposter syndrome, and like, what if I don't enjoy it, kind of stuff. And I think having that kind of formal program there, supported by Microsoft, with real good people in the background involved with it as well, for the training and all the rest of it, I think that really makes it more attractive to more people. So we're casting a wider net on getting potential great talent into the channel. And for me, I mean, you sort of take it all the way back to the start. Like, why did I get involved in IT? And I guess I've got like an inherent need to, like, I love solving problems for people. Like, when I was I just back in the day, IT support days, and it's like, well, how do we do this? So you click there. Oh, thanks, Andy. They enjoyed that, and you just. I think everyone. I mean, is it the case everyone in IT like loves solving problems?
Have you tried to turn it off, and turn it back on? That feels good. Like, oh, it's working. Wow.
Reboot.
Yeah, there is that one, of course.
But do you really need
it's when that doesn't work, then you've got to put the real thinking on.
Yes.
Oh, on again, didn't fix it. Oh, guys, we've got a live one here. Bring the backbone.
That's usually a buffer when you say, can you try turning it on? Can you shut it down and restart? Just because I don't have time right now. Just do that first.
Or you don't know.
That'll give me some time.
Or you don't know, and you just like, restart it and just see. It's a good.
There's that one. There's the what version are you on? Oh, that's not the latest version. Well, you need to update first, then we'll come back.
Are you using any extensions? No, I just go. But to circle back to the Reskill program, I do think the Reskill program is a fabulous program. It gives the opportunity for talented individuals that may have not worked with ERP implementations to go through a formalized training program. I think it's co-sponsored by Microsoft. I know that maybe one of the stakeholders of it, and some other training organizations, to allow for the opportunities for individuals that may not have they may have some business knowledge, but they may not have knowledge of ERP software or Business Central in this case, to be able to go through a program that's sponsored by someone, and they can spend most of the time while they're working, and have a community of people to work with to learn and go through the journey of learning Business Central themselves, which I find is interesting because they also have what I call a functional track and also a development track. So anybody who goes through it can get, they strive to say that anybody who goes through it can pass the MB 800 as they go through after they go through the program, and then work on projects as they finish it. And even with the development, the MB 820, which is the development certification test. So I think it's a great program to bring exposure to Business Central, and also a good way to bring additional talent into the community that we have, because there are more and more implementations. And to be candid as well, there's a lot of the old timers that are falling off because they're getting to the point where they say, I just want to retire. See, my aspiration is to go work at Costco over here in the US and stock shelves.
Okay. Sometimes that does seem attractive. I saw a great talk once where Kris Huntingford talked about the talent problem. This was a while ago, and he said, like, a lot of partners I'm sure it's the same in the US, like, you move partner to get a raise, right? Like, so you move partner, and you're not bringing anything new. Like, what about all the opportunity from Power Platform? What about all the opportunity from Copilot, or different ways of thinking? And you talk about like digital natives. We've got like people will be coming out of university soon who are going to be like Copilot natives. Like, they always had Copilot or some AI tool. Like, their brain's going to be wired a little bit different. They're going to think about problems a little bit different. And if you can't get that fresh blood, you need to get that fresh blood for the fresh ideas into
Absolutely.
the mix.
It's you summarize that perfectly, where individuals going from partner to partner, for example, and if you're not doing anything new, you could be working, and I say this candidly, just because you've been working with Business Central for 20 years doesn't mean you know something more than someone that's been working for 2. Because if you just done the same thing for 20 years, you have 20 years worth of 1 year of experience. Whereas someone who has exposure and who's learning new, you can bring more value to the organizations. And to me, sometimes I think that's overlooked. Some people just assume that, oh, you've worked within Business Central for 20 years, you're an expert. When in reality is you may have only created sales orders for those 20 years. Doesn't mean you're not good at creating sales orders. Doesn't mean
absolutely nailing the sales orders.
Say it again, please.
Yeah, they might be absolutely nailing the sales orders.
Yes, but to be able to say now you can go and do an implementation and here's all the new features, they sometimes struggle. So to me, I think it's important. I'm happy for the Reskill program because it does give people the opportunity to learn the application, have additional experience. But it's also important for those when they're looking that sometimes it's not how long someone's been doing something. Yes, it matters in some cases. I'm not saying it doesn't. It's what their exposure was in that time and what they did in that time versus they just have been doing it for 20 years because, as I tell Kris, I know some individuals who've been working with Business Central for 3 or 4 years, and they can do AL development and functional consulting far better than some individuals have been doing for 15 or 20, and vice versa. Just because someone's been doing it for 20 years, to your point, doesn't mean they haven't been keeping up as well. I mean, I fortunately don't have a life and I have to spend a lot of time trying to read all this stuff and it ends up becoming a blur where I read it and which version.
It's tricky it's tricky. I mean, that's one of the that's one of the go-to interview questions always, how do you keep up with what's happening in business? How do you keep up with all the new features?
True story. That is a real question.
For sure. Yeah, like I want to, and I'm asking them because I genuinely want to know the answer. Like maybe they've got a way of doing it that's better than the way I do it.
Exactly.
Now you can ask Copilot too at the same time.
No, that's exactly.
Copilot,
Well,
I was going to ask: is it true? So I'm aware in the UK we've got the BC Reskill for end user into BC, but they also in the US, or is it also available they're reskilling GP to BC? Is that right?
I believe that I believe you can have GP, and I think you can have anyone go through the program.
Fair enough. Yeah.
From my understanding, I did have some conversations with the members of the program. They will take anybody, and I don't mean anybody like anybody, anybody. They're just taking someone who has. It's a reskill program. Somebody who has some skills and helping them learn additional skills.
Fine. Yeah,
so if they're coming from GP and it's not a GP to BC program. It's a reskill program to learn BC, but the knowledge of GP will be helpful. They have been having webinars and some partners have been putting on webinars to help pave the way to BC from GP, explaining some of the differences. But the reskill program, from my knowledge, will take anybody that has some business understanding and help them learn how to do Business Central. Well,
I'm looking forward to Shannon's book. The GP migration. I've never used GP, but it's obviously the end of support, the whole end of support thing, and getting people off of it onto BC. I think that's that's going to be a fairly important thing going forwards.
Yeah, it's great. Well, Mr. Andy, sir, we have to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I truly value it because, as we all talk about, any time that you spend doing something, you're not doing something else, and you don't get a redo, so you have to take the time. So we greatly appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and I did learn a lot, and I appreciate it a lot. And I would like to have you on again as a follow-up to speak with you some additional topics. So I'll reach out to you afterwards, and we can have an Andy part 2.
I would love to do that. Thank you so much for having me on. I've really enjoyed chatting to you guys. Have a great weekend. I
could chat with you all day, but in the meantime, if anybody would like to reach out with you to learn more about some of the great content that you put out, such as going to put out that how to load Power BI by multiple companies, as you talked about.
You got 2 challenges, man.
or some of the other challenges, or even assistance with Business Central implementations, or just to share knowledge with, or to go have, now that dry January is over, have a beverage with. How should someone get in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is probably the easiest one, or through my blog. You can get to my blog on https andy.ms.
Oh, that's easy. Andy.ms. We will put links to your LinkedIn and also that Andy.ms on the guest profile page of the website as well as the episode. Thank you again, sir. Have a great afternoon.
All right, thank you, Andy.
And a great weekend. Ciao, ciao.
Take care, guys.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is Matalino16. And you can see those links down below in their show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.